Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much for having me tonight to speak about this program. It is a pleasure, it's a privilege to be able to share the good news for this immigration policy. My name is María Campos. I'm a lawyer in Vancouver. Thank you very much, Carice, for the introduction. Today, we'll speak about the temporary public policy to facilitate permanent residence. This is a gift from the government. So in late 2020, the Canadian government promised to bring in about 400,000 immigrants into Canada. That's an impressive number of immigrants. And in order to achieve that goal, programs like this had to be created. And the benefit about this program is that it's a unique opportunity to apply for permanent residence, and also that the requirements to apply under the different streams are not that difficult. This means more people will be able to obtain permanent residence in this beautiful country. For this specific program, there are basically two scenarios. There is a stream for international graduates, and there is a stream for foreign workers. Each one has a stream as well for French speakers, which is the reason why the government wants to expand the Francophone population and the community within the country. So we'll speak about the four programs. So it's basically two of them very similar: international graduates for French speakers, international graduates for people who don't speak French, only English, and same for foreign workers. So we'll have the French speaking portion and then the rest. So they're very unique, very important programs. Very impressive to be honest. I've never seen this in my career, something like this. I've been practicing for almost 10 years. And it's the first time that something like this happens. So it is promising because it means the government of Canada is welcoming more immigrants. And at the same time, it's the government of Canada is considering and being grateful for the contribution of foreigners into the country. For international students, they invest a huge amount of money in their programs. And it is sad to see that sometimes they are not able to become permanent residents because they are missing one or two requirements, even though they invested in their education in this country and they're settled. So this will give the opportunity to a lot of people to be able to become permanent residents now. I got a list of questions initially from Carice, where the questions are very interesting, I have to say. So this, my intention tonight will be to answer all of them and to prepare our participants to be able to be self-represented during these applications, so they have a successful outcome and become permanent residents of Canada. So the target, as I mentioned earlier, it's 400,000 admissions of new permanent residents in 2021. That is the highest number that the Canadian government has committed to invite to the country. And in order to achieve that, other things have been happening. For example, we all heard the big news back in February 13 for express entry, when the Canadian government decreased the CRS score for Canadian experience class. It started to happen last year when the government divided the programs for express entry. I give a little bit of background because this program has an impact because of that as well. So express entry, it's a system, it's a processing system. It's not a program. It covers 3 different programs. One of those programs is Canadian Experience Class, and the government of Canada has been friendly, trying to bring immigrants into that program as well. It is not a coincidence that now they're giving the opportunity to people with similar requirements to apply under the policy. Temporary residents of Canada are currently here to contribute to the economy. So the economic objectives of Canada are very clear, and the government of Canada is paying back the contribution of those workers who are here or who have been here for a long time and haven't been able to become permanent residents. It is also the opportunity to create a temporary pathway to permanent residence. So if people qualify my advice is to take the opportunity because this may not happen again. For the public policy considerations for this specific program, foreign nationals with an eligible Canadian credential and who are currently employed in Canada are able to apply for the program. Not all programs are eligible, and this is creating a lot of conflict and many questions among immigrants because there are so many schools in Canada, but some of them are not going to be eligible for this program. Specifically, and the formula reduces to the schools and the programs that are eligible for a post-graduation work permit. That's basically the formula. So the regulations call for certain legal terminology that sometimes it is difficult to understand. However, it reduces to schools and programs that are eligible for post-graduation work permits. Also, for people who have been working in Canada for at least 1 year in what the government of Canada now calls essential occupations, they will be able to benefit as well under one of these policies. That is great. It is also unprecedented that the program is covering positions that otherwise will not be eligible. For example, cashiers, clerks. We'll talk about that, and I give you examples of the most common positions in the list, but that's unprecedented because unless there is a pilot project open for a specific position, most of those ones will not be able to apply for permanent residence under a different program. So it is a great opportunity. This public policy comes from Section 25.2 of the Act, and that's very specific because that section grants power to the minister to create specific programs to cover the needs of the country, the economic growth, and it's not a common situation. Some people may be familiar with humanitarian and compassionate grounds. That's also part of that section. So it's an exemption to the rule. That's basically what it means. So what it means is when someone is not eligible under a different stream, they may qualify under humanitarian reasons. So considering the establishment in the country and the contribution to the economy and certain factors. So this is similar. It's similar in the way that the minister took their powers granted by the Act to create this public policy and invite more immigrants that will not qualify otherwise. That's why it makes it very unique. It makes it very human as well. It's in my opinion, and the way I see it, it shows that the government is not only focusing, because at some point it was focusing on a certain kind of immigrant, and it was difficult because even though someone had a certain background in their countries, they came here to Canada, and we all know sometimes we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to go through different stages of settlement, and we have to do different kinds of jobs, even though sometimes we're professionals in our countries. So while they were getting settled, or we are getting settled, it was more difficult to find a pathway to become permanent residents. And this is very human. This is the human side of the immigration policies that sometimes are very rough and very difficult to work with. This is the problem, the numbers. It looks like a lot, but in reality, it's not a lot. I see a lot of my clients and a lot of people very, very scared about the numbers. Some of them, I see all these kind of comments. I hear all these kind of comments. Oh, this is gonna close within a day, or it's gonna close within a week, or Maria, how long it's gonna be open for? I have no idea. All I can tell you is that this is not new, that numbers and caps for programs are very normal. Actually, in the past, before express entry system came into place, it used to be by caps, and it still works the same way for some programs. For example, the parents sponsorship program works exactly the same way. There is a cap. It is unknown if this number is going to last for a day, for a week, or for a month. All I can tell you is a lot of people are on board, and there are several requirements, which I will speak about later. For example, the medical test, and the doctors are getting overbooked now. So there are no medical appointments. So a lot of people are on the same boat. Only a few people, I can tell, they are ready to submit the application on May 6th, And I'm still doubting that everyone will be able to submit on the 6th for two main reasons. The first one, it's all the main requirements are going to be released on the 6th. We know what the statutory requirements are, and we have an idea, probably 95% idea of what they will ask for, but there may be a very last minute requirement. We don't know. That may or may not happen. That's one reason. The other reason is technical difficulties. Just today, the website crashed for a little bit, and we noticed that the payment schedule, the fee schedule, and the government website was updated. So we don't know what's going to happen on the 6th. On the 13th of February, when there was that massive set of invitations for express entry, the website wasn't working properly for a few days. So I don't even know if everyone's going to be able to submit the application on the 6th because of technical difficulties. You have to be ready, but anything could happen. No one knows. There is also another factor. The applicants who were invited on the 13th of February on their express entry have the deadline to submit the documents on May the 13th or May the 12th, because it's 90 days. So it's going to be a very, very busy week for immigration. It's not going to be just opening this program. It's going to be kind of the last stage for that express entry draw, the massive draw for express entry in February, because it's going to be the 90-day period at that time. The French streams, out of the 4, as I mentioned, there are 2 for French speakers. Those ones have no caps. So that's an advantage, because they will have until November to submit their applications, which will give them a little bit more time. And also some advantages, because they can sit and watch more comfortably, knowing that the program will remain open. And also I think that's because the English test, it's also taking longer. There are not as many dates as there are for the English language testing. So the numbers are not big. It's not a lot of spots. However, I believe that it might last a couple of weeks even open. We don't know. I have to say that these are active applications. So which means it's the applications that are complete and in compliance with the processing, with the requirements. I've heard of people who are going to be applying and they're saying I'm going to be applying, hopefully I get it, even though they are missing certain requirements. Most likely they won't get it, of course. I mean, officers make mistakes as well, but they're humans, but they don't meet the requirements. So most likely the applications are going to be dismissed. But what's going to happen, even if a lot of people apply, in the end, what matters is the active, full, and complete applications. The government of Canada is going to have to take time to review the requirements and make sure applications are complete and ready for processing. And once they're complete, an applicant usually is sent a letter for the next step, whatever step it is. Sometimes it's biometric collection letter or police clearance certificate, depending on the nationality, if the police clearance certificate is not submitted in the beginning. So whatever the next step in the application is, depending on the case, that will be the next step. And that means you are already in the queue for the application. So only if the application is complete and ready for processing. So those 40,000 spots for international graduate or the 50,000 spots for foreign worker stream are for complete applications. We don't know how long it's going to take for the government to process the first stage of the process of the application. We don't know. We're not certain. For express entry right now, because I'm considering they're going to have similar timeline, it's taking about 4 to 5 weeks to return applications that are not complete, and then to request documents for the second stage, which means they may take about the same time if this application is filed electronically, which is what they're aiming for. So you have to worry about submitting a complete application. I don't know if they're going to be publishing the numbers of applications that are received, and they're full. Usually the website is updated every Wednesday, and we don't know what happens from a Wednesday to the next Wednesday, that it might be full already. And actually in 2013 or 2012, something like that, when there was a cap for federal skilled worker at the time, the government of Canada used to publish every week the number of applications received and applications that were already in the queue. But there was one specific case, and this is very interesting because an applicant checked the website on Wednesday, and I'm gonna say a number. So let's say the cap was 100 applications for that program. It wasn't more than that, of course. I just wanna give you the example of what could happen if you follow that. So it would be 100 applications for X program at the time. That was a few years back. The applicant checked the website and it said they were at 85 applications received. So the person submitted the application, and the next Wednesday, this person checked again, and that application, the number had changed to, let's say, 95. By the time the application of the person was received already by immigration, so this person felt, I'm already in the queue because I submitted when it was 85, now it's 95. I have proof that they received, so it's fine. To his surprise or her surprise, because this is a case that made it to federal court, the application was returned saying that the cap was reached. So this person goes to court because it didn't make sense. So the person had print screens of everything. And the court said that the website, it's only a guide, that is not binding. So we don't have a guarantee that the information is accurate because it's impossible to record everything in real time. So it's just a guide. It may be or it may not be the number that they show on their system. Even if that happens, you still submit a full application, complete application, all the paperwork with all the tips that I'm going to give you today, and just wait for your acknowledgement, your formal acknowledgement of receipt. Because when you submit online, you get an acknowledgement of receipt. However, that doesn't mean that the application is complete. If the application is not complete, the officer, or you'll get a letter, the officer will cancel the application. When it's online, it's not a refusal, it's a cancellation. And the cancellation means the spot is open for someone else. So until the 40,000 applications or the 50 applications are reached. That's the way it works. If the application is canceled as incomplete, then the chances or the likelihood of getting the application sent back and making it of time are going to be way lower. So an application has to be complete since the very beginning. Okay, for international graduates, there are thousands of students who graduate from Canada every year. There are about 8 or 9 requirements. Oops, I'll list them here and I'll explain one by one. The program must have been completed after January 2017 from a designated learning institution. And then it goes to other requirements. I want to clarify designated learning institution because there is a lot of misinformation and misunderstandings about this. Most schools are designated learning institutions. I define designated learning institutions as the license to open the door and to have a school operating by law with under all the regulations. So most or all, if not all, schools are DLI, designated learning institutions, but not all of them are eligible. Again, the formula reduces to the programs and schools that grant post-graduation work permits. When you read the definition by law, it comes to that. Most public schools are eligible. It will depend on the program, but most schools, that will be depending on the length of the program. But usually a public school is eligible and some private schools are eligible. So you have to be careful that if you studied in Canada, first that the school is DLI. So most likely the school is DLI. If you got a study permit, chances are that the school is a designated learning institution. Second, did the program grant a post-graduation work permit? And there are other policies for post-graduation work permits now that, because the government of Canada is really showing their interest in keeping and retaining international graduates. It's pretty obvious. The reason is there are people who paid for their own education. They are paying to be in Canada and learning the culture, getting settled here, learning the way Canada works, contributing to the economy. So it doesn't cost a penny to the government. And they want to be in Canada and pay taxes and have a life here, bring their dependents or everything else. They're perfect candidates. That's why studying in Canada has become so popular. So A and B basically is a designated learning institution, which most of them are, and that the school has or the school granted a post-graduation work permit. That's the formula. Also, if the credential leads to an occupation in a skilled trade, which is the list very similar to the federal skilled trade program. Again, the government wants to cover that sector as well because they need workers there. It is important to say that the person has to be authorized or have been authorized to study in Canada and always studying legally. There may be a time where the person lost the status, and it's very easy to lose the status as an international graduate. Some students don't know that their study permit may expire before the date that it's printed on the permit. I see that a lot. There are several rules. For example, the person cannot be inactive, so the student cannot be inactive for longer than 90 days without an authorization or an authorized leave. If there is no authorized leave, then the person may be contradicting or contravening the conditions of the study permit. So they have to make sure that the study permit was valid at all times, that they did not take unauthorized breaks. Because without their knowledge, without them knowing, the permit might be already expired. I had a case yesterday that I was assessing, and unfortunately, when we were working out the dates, we became aware that the person was already without legal status in Canada, even though that person felt very certain that she was legally in the country because she had a permit, she had a piece of paper with an expiry date to next year. But that doesn't mean the status is kept. There are regulations, and I invite you to read your study permit and check the regulations that are there. There is one that is very particular and very common, and it says you must cease working if you no longer meet these criteria. And it points you out to certain sections of the Act and regulations. I usually ask students, have you read those sections? No, I don't, but someone told me this or someone told me that. Well, you have to go in the Act and check, or you have to inform yourself of what that means, because you may be breaching the conditions of your study permit without knowing. So it is important that the studies were obtained legally and you were authorized to study in the meantime. This is going to be something that the officers are going to be doing when assessing the applications. They have to make sure that the studies were in compliance with the conditions and the program and also the regulations at the time. Be employed in Canada with a valid permit or authorization. That's a very straightforward rule. For people who have a post-graduation work permit, well, they have a valid permit. I've been asked the question of if they have to be working full-time or part-time. We don't have guidance on that yet. So it seems that as long as you are employed, it's okay to move forward with the program. Authorization, and this is an interesting comment I will make about this, because I spoke to a person last week. This is the scenario. The lady finished a program, an eligible program of 1 year at a public college. But because she wanted to have a longer post-graduation work permit, she registered for another program. So she did not get the post-graduation work permit immediately after graduation of the first one. So she's trying to get two to get a longer post-graduation work permit in the end. She's currently working. So if applying under this policy, she complies with all the requirements considering the graduation of the first program, but she's now working as a student, so with the authorization to work part-time while she's studying the second program. Based on the current statutory regulations and requirements, she would be eligible to apply. So if you have that scenario, it works the same way because it's an authorization to work. Language requirement, also unprecedented and very, very good, CLB5. For people who don't know what CLB means, that's a Canadian language benchmark. So it's the proficiency level. So in Canada, there are 12 levels from 1 to 12. As you can tell, 5, it's a very friendly level because it's less than medium. So it's like when I say basic intermediate, some people believe that when I say basic, they can barely communicate, but no, that's not what I mean. So in a language, because it's a language is very, very broad and very rich. When you talk about a basic, it's already enough. I'm talking about the grammar part. I'm talking about the structure of the language. And CLB4, CLB5, it's a basic intermediate level at the grammar level, at the whole structure of the language. And I'm talking about English and French because the proficiency, it's also considered CLB5 for French speakers. So that's a requirement that changes, which is the language requirement. That's either French or English. There is no advantage if you speak both for this. So some people say, well, I have CLB3 or CLB4 for French, and I have CLB5 for English. It's not relevant here. It may be relevant for a different program, but not for this one specific. Reside in Canada with valid temporary resident status or be eligible to restore the status. It is worth mentioning the government extended the policy to restore people's status, temporary resident status, to August 2021. So if you lost your status, do not waste time. Go and restore your stay because this policy is going to expire. It's also unprecedented, and it was a friendly way of the government to process those temporary applications and focus on the other ones. So to give time to people to fix the situation because of the pandemic, which is a situation that we are all on board, we're all facing, and the government is being thoughtful about it. So reside in Canada with a valid temporary resident status. What is temporary resident status? So that would be visitor, student, or worker. So either one of those will give you temporary resident status. Important to mention that some people may have a work permit, but that does not necessarily grant temporary status. For example, some refugee claimants may hold a work permit, but do not necessarily have temporary resident status. So they have the work permit, and the work permit is granted under different policies, but not to grant status. Intend to reside in a province or territory other than Quebec. When the applications are filled in, you have to say where you intend to reside. In my opinion, this is going to be one of the main points where applications are going to be canceled or refused. So pay extra attention to this. Because the intent to reside has to show also establishment. Intent to reside is not a new requirement. It already works on different programs. It's part of different programs. For example, a provincial nominee program. When you apply for a provincial nominee program, you have to show intention to reside in that province. And the government requires information about your establishment. For example, you have a driver's license, or maybe you purchase a house, maybe your children are at school. So what can you show to prove that you have intention to reside in a province other than Quebec? Whatever province is. Luckily, this program is federal, so you don't have to stick to a certain province or a certain territory, but they want to see that you have the intention to reside. Why do they do this? Okay. If this is an unprecedented and unique program, the door has to be open for people who really want to settle in Canada and who really want to be here. If they're going to take a spot get permanent residence, and then go away, this is not what the government wants to cover. They need people here for the economic growth. So it means the intention to reside is important. And that will translate into, and that will also explain why, when it comes to family member, so when people have family member, there is extra tension for the family members who are already in Canada, because that's also intention to reside. So if you are here and one of your factors is that your family members are here, you should show that in the intention to reside, because then you don't have a reason to go back to your country. So that's a plus. So if you have a family member, if not, think about what you have in your particular case and what you can show for the intention to reside and the establishment that you have in the country already. Apply online. So far, we don't know exactly what the interface is gonna be, but so far, the regulation said the electronic means or the way they provide. So when the program opens, it has to be applied that way. They have to be specific because sometimes there are exceptions. For example, when you apply to restore your status or when you apply to extend your status, it's been said that it has to be done online. However, if there are certain factors or certain particular situations of the applicant, they may be able to apply on paper, but this is not the case. So make sure you apply online and you are applying in the proper portal and the proper website when the time comes. And also very important, same as other and all the programs, the foreign national is not inadmissible. The foreign national has to be admissible, and there are several grounds of inadmissibility, and the topic is very broad. But it could be criminal inadmissibility, it could be medical inadmissibility, or even financial inadmissibility, even though this program does not require financials. I don't think they're going to be assessing that one specifically for this, but that is a kind of inadmissibility. Conditions applicable to foreign workers who are working in essential occupations. So 1 year of paid full-time work experience. I added the word paid because one of the requirements within the list, because it shows legal vocabulary and it refers you to a section of the act. And it says it has to meet the definition of section so-and-so of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. Basically, it means it has to be paid full-time work experience. So if it's not paid, if it was volunteering, it won't work for this program. There are two streams, stream A, stream B, and I'll give you examples. So stream A, basically it's for occupations in the health industry. There is a list and it's for occupations related to health. Stream B, it's broad and it's beautiful. It's very good. I'm really impressed of how far the government of Canada went with stream B and the list. Experience from the experience acquired in Annex A. So if it was a health occupation and you are applying under stream A, which is 20,000 cap, it cannot be combined with Annex B. But if you are applying under the stream for Annex B, so 30,000 cap, it could be half and half or it could be combined, either way. So again, this shows an advantage for people who are employed in the health industry. Of course, for obvious reasons, frontline workers and people who have been contributing firsthand to all of this pandemic, helping. Okay, employed in Canada in any occupation at the time of submission. Beautiful as well, beautiful. Honestly, it will be hard and it will be difficult for some applicants, especially those ones who lost their job through the pandemic or who are struggling to keep a full-time paid job, to be able to be employed at the same time that they are submitting the application in a certain occupation. That would be difficult. So this shows flexibility. This shows the government understands that we are all facing uncertain times, difficult times, and you can be employed in any occupation at the time of submission. Language requirement should be CLB4, again, Canadian Language Benchmark 4, level 4. Flexible friendly, achievable. It still requires some level of grammar, but flexible compared to a 9 that sometimes you require for express entry to secure a good score. So very, very flexible. Reside in Canada with valid temporary resident status. Important to keep legal status at all times. If you are a worker, so you are planning to apply under this section, under the stream of foreign workers, essential occupations, and you have lost your status, there are also specific policies to restore the status that even allow you to work in the meantime while you are waiting. The government has shown that they care for this, for workers in Canada. So 2 policies, the most important ones, be able to restore as a worker, and some people who are applying for a closed work permit or employer-specific work permit, they are able to start working while waiting if meeting some requirements. Another good one is if you have an employer-specific work permit and you are changing jobs and you get another offer, employer-specific work permit, you are able to start working without waiting for the answer of the work permit. So you can work in the meantime as long as you have applied. So careful with the small print, but those are flexible policies. Apply online. Intent to reside. Again, intent to reside. I've seen that international graduates have had more time to become involved in the community, maybe volunteering or being part of associations and then they can use those things that they've done for the intent to reside. Workers have been busy. They haven't, most of them have employer-specific work permits. Some of them have family and other commitments, and they're not able to volunteer or be part of many activities that may show settlement. You still your way, just do it your way. Whatever you have to show intent to reside in the province that you live at, do so. Every case is very different, but pay extra attention to this section because you have to show, you have to comply with the requirement of intention to reside. And if it's weak, it might be a way or it might be a reason for the officer to refuse. So be careful with that. Apply online, and the foreign national must be admissible, so not being inadmissible, important. If there is any kind of inadmissibility, that must be overcome first. Examples of Annex A for eligible health-related occupations. There are lots. I'm just giving some examples here. Most of you probably saw already Annex A. Some of you already know you are eligible, and that may be the reason why you are here tonight. And I'll get straight to the point and the tips and answering the questions, very interesting questions. But these are examples. So just to give you an idea what Annex A covers. So nursing, physicians, dentists, optometrists, chiropractors, pharmacists, dietitians, very, very specific, specialized occupations, home support workers, housekeepers, and related occupations in the health industry. Annex B, other eligible essential occupations. I'm really impressed by this. I'm very grateful that the Canadian government is looking at the industry and all the workers and every single sector to provide opportunities for everyone. So cashiers, clerks, retail salespersons, industrial and electrical construction trades that we know those ones are usually in high demand. But for whatever reason, they've been with other programs that they have other requirements difficult to meet, and this is the opportunity. Farm workers, harvesting, landscaping, natural resources laborers, cleaners, home childcare providers, security guards, teacher assistants, many, many occupations that help us every day. You know, this is part of who we are, our economy. So very, very good action from the government. These are other conditions that must be met by both, applicable for foreign workers and international graduates. So it has to be by both. Intention to reside, again. So I suggest for the intention to reside that you do a declaration. So do a declaration Be specific about your points and your intention to reside. Use the words that you have the intention to reside and what you've done to accomplish that. Just applying for the programs itself, like themselves, it already shows the intention to reside. Show establishment based on your individual and family factors, whatever those are. We all have something because we want to make Canada our home. So I'm pretty sure you already done something. Maybe you are part of a religious organization or any other organizations. Maybe you got involved in your kids' school activities. So whatever you do, try it now. Don't go crazy about it, but about the declaration, but just show the main points of what you're doing to establish yourself in Canada. Conditions applicable to family members in Canada. It is important to the government that families keep together, family reunification. So for this specific program, if they're asking people to show intention to reside, they also want to make sure that the person doesn't have a main reason to go back to the country, which is usually the family. So the conditions applicable to family members in Canada. So the foreign nationals, so the family members are in Canada. They have been included as an accompanying family member in an application for permanent residence. So they have to be listed. Now, who's a family member? Okay, family member is your spouse, your children, or the children of your spouse. So it's a very, very close family member. It's your main circle. Some people, especially in some countries, like I'm from Mexico, and for a family member, it could be my grandma, my uncle, and honestly, I've seen people adding them to the application. Unfortunately, we cannot bring our uncle or grandma and everyone, not this time. So be careful with the definition of family member, that you are actually including people and your close circle as adopted children too. So just check the regulations and make sure that people who you are including in your application are considered family members. The family member has to be admissible to Canada. So if there is inadmissibility from the family member, that will render you inadmissible as well. So you have to check. If that's the situation, this is not going to work. It depends on the inadmissibility, may be overcome in a certain way, but usually affects the application as a whole. And of course, the officer has to determine that the main applicant, the principal applicant, meets all the conditions. Even if the spouse is a great candidate, if the principal applicant does not meet all conditions, it won't work. It won't be approved for the family member. So it has to be as a whole. There are some provisions where the family member can be abroad. Those are provided in the Act. So it could be, the family members have to be listed in the application still as an accompanying family member. And when it comes to the processing of the family member, it has to be indicated that the application is made under the economic class, because this is an economic class for the purposes of helping the economic growth, but not for the fees. And I will talk about that too. Luckily, the fees were as per, like similar to a humanitarian application, but the intention of the program is to assist Canada in its economic growth. The officer will assess the application for permanent residence based on the requirements of the program. So if the main applicant complies with everything, if I'm applying under international graduate and I actually went to the school, it's eligible, etc., everything it's okay, then it goes to the family member. And the officer will evaluate if the person is a member of an immigration class. So they will have to check that they have all the requirements, and that if the main applicant complies and it's eligible, then it will be granted to the family members. Key dates. Okay. Application intake, May the 6th, 2021. So that's 6-7 days from now. And everyone's going crazy right now, preparing all the requirements and all the documents. The program for not the French, but the other one just English, so not the French speaking, it's November 5th. That's when the application intake ends. unless the intake caps are reached, which most likely it'll happen. I don't think we'll make it to November 5th. I don't know when, but November 5th, no. Probably not one day, but it's not gonna be full in one day, but it will make it. So for fees, these are the fees. Application fee, $550 per adult, $150 per child. Right of permanent residence fee, $500 adult, and the biometric fee could be paid per adult or per family. If it's a family, it would be for $170. We don't know yet if you already did biometrics, if you will be able to overcome biometrics again, because that's a very common question. For certain programs, it is mandatory to do biometrics again. I believe for this one, it's gonna happen and they're gonna do biometrics again. So they have to assess admissibility, and that's a point that they made in every policy. So most likely you'll have to undergo biometrics again. And a good one here. So tips for a successful application. Avoid taking photos of your documents. These days, it's very popular that people use the smartphones, they take a photo, or they have these awesome scanning apps. Do not use them. I've seen applications. I've seen people coming to see me because their applications were returned because of bad quality. They were canceled in the system because of bad quality on a photo or because something happened with the scanning. So make sure your scanning is good quality. It won't make the application more difficult, but it will make it look better. And the officer will be able to define the application and to define the documents to see what you're trying to show in a better way. And it will be faster and better for the processing of your application. Use a scanner instead of camera or in cameras or apps. Digital version of original documents must be in color. This is another common reason of cancellation and refusal for digital applications. So even if you copy the application, if you scan it and it's black and white, it may be canceled. So make sure that if the document, the original document, it's scanned in color, and that's the way you show. It happens with translations, for example. You make sure that all your documents are actually there. Documents in a language other than English or French must be translated. You send the document to the translator. And I'm a translator to English, Spanish, so that's why I know this. So I get the document from the client, I do the translation, have my, my declaration as a translator, and then I add a copy, black and white, usually, of the document that the client sent me. So it's a 3-piece file for translation, right? So it's a declaration of the translator, the translation itself, and the source document, which is what the client needed translated. That's what the translator and most translators around the world would do. Make sure to add the color copy of the original document at the very end, but do not remove the translator's document because that's the one that the translator used. So you cannot alter the file. So even if it's double, make sure you add the color one too. 4 megabytes maximum per file. That's kind of obvious because the system won't allow you to submit files that are bigger than that. Use a cover letter if a file contains several documents. So for PDF documents, it is common that you have to add a PDF with several pages, but about different topics. You can use a cover letter brief to explain what the file contains. For example, here I'm including bank statements, birth certificate, or English test, for example, if you're including everything in one file. Again, translations. It's a common mistake. People forget to translate their documents. They have to be translated. Ensure you got proper police clearance certificates. Follow the instructions from the Canadian website, from the immigration website. Depending on the country, documents might be called different ways. And there may be even more than one. Make sure you got them all, the ones listed on the website, and that you don't make mistakes by just assuming that you are getting the police clearance certificate from your country, but in reality, immigration wants something else because it will be refused. It will be canceled. Some countries also need driving records. The ones that I can think of right now, as quickly, will be Chile and New Zealand, Australia. Australia for sure, New Zealand I don't remember right now, but you need a driving record. So even if you get the police clearance certificate, make sure you are complying. So your best source for making it to the website in your country that it's a proper authority, go to the Canadian website first. Do not assume you know what you need. And don't go straight for the process without consulting the Canadian website, because this is, I'll say probably 80% of the applications are refused because of this. And it could be fixed easily if people went to the website and did the process from scratch, not assuming anything. Be conservative in your approach. What I mean with this, when in doubt, first ask a professional. But if you don't have a professional, or you cannot afford a consultation of, you just don't have anyone to ask at the time, be conservative in your approach. Some people say, okay, the question is asking, have you been refused a visa, permit, permanent residence application, anything? Well, I don't know, but one time I got the application canceled, but I don't think that's a refusal. If you don't have anyone to ask, just say yes and explain. Say yes, and then explain what happened. And let the officer assess if it's a yes or a no. You're not going to be punished for saying yes and then explaining. The officer may say, oh, he's being conservative, or he or she are being conservative, but this is not posing an issue. So I'm not going to make a big deal about it. But if you say no, because you assume it's a no, or in your opinion, it won't create any conflict, and it turns out that it's a serious situation, you may face misrepresentation. First, you're going to get refused, but you'll also face misrepresentation, which will make it harder to establish yourself in Canada or get permanent residence under a different program. So be conservative, always be conservative. When in doubt, be conservative. Also review your documents. Something else for people who are going to be applying for permanent residence under any of these programs. They already had permits, study permits, visas, work permits. Make sure you go back to your applications, go back in time, pull out the applications, those IMM forms that were so annoying to open at the time with barcodes and stuff. Pull out the application and make sure you don't have any inconsistencies. So even if you have to go back a few years ago and check what you answered, that's what you've done, what you should have done already, but it's not common. Some people don't do it. So go back. This is the time to ensure that there are no discrepancies. I've seen cases where the officer with one click will pull out your entire file, and they will check applications from the very beginning to make sure everything is consistent. So go back and check. I had a case a few years ago. There was a procedural fairness letter from an officer where they were requesting my client to explain the discrepancy in a tourist visa from 5 years back at the time. So that was crazy because my client didn't even remember what she had written in that visa. So we had to check the files and then assess the concern, because there are material factors. Fortunately, for this one, the core part, it's based on the statutory requirements that the policy shows, which is either you work in an essential occupation or you study it at an eligible institution. But there are other programs that the core part may be experience acquired abroad, for example, like Express Entry. If you mention in one of your applications that you did not have experience, but now all of a sudden you have experience and you're submitting a letter, it is certain for sure that one of those applications is not truthful. Which one would it be? in the eyes of the officer, most likely it's going to be the most recent one that gives you a benefit. And that's when misrepresentation happens, because it becomes material to the application that you are filing. So you have to be careful, go back, take the time to answer your personal history in detail to make sure it matches. Okay, so I'm gonna get to the questions. This is my team. So these are the immigration lawyers at Invicta Law Corporation. And we have an immigration consultant as well. And I'll get to the questions. So how do we do this, Carice? Would you help me with this? Or I have the questions here. Should I read through, or you have a new list? How do we do it?
Oh, we have so many questions. So if you like, you can go through the ones that you currently have, if you have answers to those, and then I can ask the ones that we have here. We really have quite a few questions. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get through all of them.
Okay.
Because your presentation really was just so interesting. Questions are coming in by the droves. So go ahead with the ones that I gave you earlier, and then I will ask you the ones that we have here.
Perfect. Okay. So one question here. Do I have to delete any previous express entry profiles before I start this one? No, and don't do it. You are able to have both. At least that's the situation right now. Unless something comes up on the 6th, you don't have to do that. So you don't have to delete your profile. There was a draw today for 400 points. So that's good news too. And some people were invited, and they are still trying to, or they're still considering applying for the new stream, for the policy. You can do both. This is a financial situation because you have to pay for both. At some point, you're going to have to withdraw one of them because one of them may just go faster. But right now, there is nothing requiring you to have or to delete your express entry profile. Does my employer have to comply with Lmia? No. So it depends. So if you already, you should have already an Lmia if this is a specific employer work permit. If not, this is also available for people who have work permits with no LMIAs. For example, people who have post-graduation work permits, and they have worked in an essential occupation for a year. Do I need to keep working or stay in my current job after submitting all the documents, or after I submit all the documents needed? You don't have to stay in your current job. I was asked this question earlier in a consultation. You have a duty to inform the government of any changes, any material changes in your situation. If you stop working, in some cases you don't have to inform. Now, if we are strict at the wording of the policy, it says to be employed at the time you submit. So even if you got the job the day before, it doesn't say you must remain employed. And I don't think they're going to be forcing people to be employed because of the uncertain times during the pandemic. We don't even know. Some they might. What if you work in a restaurant, for example, and they are just facing these closures, right? And all the restrictions because of the pandemic. So we don't. At this point, it doesn't require you to keep working. Doesn't require you to stay in your current job. Now, I'm advising people, I'm telling them, I'm encouraging them to use this program, but also have a plan B. And for some people, the plan B means remain employed, so they may be able to qualify under a different stream, especially because it's only certain 90,000 applicants total, right? If you are not a French speaker. When referring to employment, does it matter whether it's full-time or part-time? No, I mentioned that. So at this time, it doesn't. Are there any specifications on the employer? Is there a company profile required What documents need to be provided as evidence? Okay, 3 questions in one, let's see. There are no specifications for the employer. Now, you cannot be self-employed. And I had a case as well, a question asked for someone who was a shareholder, the main shareholder. So the main shareholder, 100% shares, it's self-employed. So even though they're on payroll. So you have to be careful because even the pay stubs won't show that the person it's paying EI because they're 100% shareholders, so be careful. So you have to be employed and it has to be paid work, no self-employment unless there is an exception for health occupations. There is no company profile required, but if it's your own company, be careful. It doesn't matter the size of the company. And documents needed to be provided as evidence. Yes, so the letter of employment, pay stubs, record of employment, T4, contract. The letter of employment needs to have all the requirements listed on the website for the economic programs, which are usually the same for express entry. So make sure you follow all of them. If my Canadian experience is less than a year, as graduated in 2020, would that be a problem? No, it won't be a problem if you are applying under the international graduate stream because you graduated in 2020 and you don't need to have at least 1 year of experience. International graduate stream. I'll start working in May 3rd. Can I still apply? Yes. As I said, it's even the day before. The regulations and the statutory requirements call for being employed at the time of submission, at the time the application is received. Sorry, at the time the application is received, which is you usually get AOR, acknowledgement of receipt, straight away. But if it takes a few days, then you have to keep employed for those few days or weeks. I don't think it's going to take weeks, but it may. I'm eligible for this new pathway undergraduate student stream, and I'm also eligible for Canadian experience class this June. Can I apply for both? Yes, you can. Does it matter what type of course was taken? We have taken a 1-year long course or master's or PhD. Yeah, so those are the ones that I mentioned. It has to be longer than 8 months because it has to be eligible for a post-graduation work permit. If the program was shorter than 8 months, then you won't be eligible for a post-graduation work permit. Does it matter what type of course was taken? So I already read that one. International graduate stream, can I be eligible if I work part-time? Yeah, that's the scenario I mentioned from my client. So even if working part-time, that's scenario. Is there any order in which the profiles would be adjudged? Right now, it seems complete applications, first come, first served, but complete applications, complete active applications. So even if 50,000 people apply under the international graduate stream on May 6th, I assure you that a lot of them are not eligible. So it doesn't mean the spots are going to be gone. It won't. So it has to be active, full applications. Complete applications. Is there any, does a police clearance certificate and medical need to be submitted while I make my profile under this new stream or international graduates? Yes, it has to be. You are going to need the police clearance certificate and the medical. And as I mentioned during the presentation, medical test, doctors are getting overbooked. So I have a client who got their date for May 20th. They may open new dates, I don't know, but right now, yes. So you have to get both. The police clearance certificate, same thing. Some nationalities, some countries, you cannot get it in advance. You may need a letter from the government. So in those specific scenarios, you may be able to wait. But at this time, there is no exemption for that. Okay, so those are the questions from this list.
Okay, so I will start with some of the ones that we have here. The first question is, can you talk a bit about eligibility of family members? For example, if I put my family member who is currently out of status but eligible to restore status under my PR application, will it be denied or canceled?
Okay, so if they're eligible to restore, they should restore first. So restore as soon as possible, because restoration could be even as a visitor. So restore and get the submission confirmation as proof that they're already restoring the status. I won't advise you to go just without the status altogether, because that might come down to inadmissibility. And remember that one of the factors is being inadmissible to Canada.
Okay. Okay, when do you think the government will release the actual guidelines for this pathway?
Well, the main requirements, everything will probably sit on the 6th. I haven't heard of any date. So the 6th is going to be when we see the interface and how it works. We know the requirements, which are just the ones we went through, and the statutory requirements, which are the basic for all applications: birth certificate, translated documents, passport, a photograph, the letter of employment, what the letter must have, which is already listed for other programs. But the final version, I believe we're going to be able to see it on the 6th, unless they give us a surprise and they release it the day after, a few days earlier. But it should have been out by now if there was something different. Similar to Express Entry, there is no real checklist that you can see beforehand. You see the checklist when you enter the information into the system. So I think it's going to be similar. Probably on that day, we'll find out.
Okay. Is this a lottery system or first comes, first serve, or is there a different parameter? I think you answered that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be first come, first serve for complete applications.
For the international graduate stream, it does say you need to be currently employed. Is there any minimum wage requirement?
No, but it has to be, usually what the government looks for is that it makes sense with the labor market. There is no median wage, which is what they're probably asking. For certain programs, they have to go with a median. So wages in Canada are established by low, medium, and high. For most programs, the government works with a median, but not for this one. So it has to just make sense. It has to be above the legal, right? Or within the legal limits.
Okay. I'm working as an admin assistant in a healthcare facility for more than a year, and I can't find this position listed as a position. Could you tell me if there's a similar job that I'm not aware of that would fit my application to apply under the health worker stream or the foreign worker stream?
I don't know all the NOCs, all the NOCs by memory. I will have to check. I will have to ask you the duties and see if based on the duties that you have, we can fit the position within one of the NOCs listed. Now, I'll give you a tip. What works for the NOC is not just the title, it's also the duties. So it has to be 50% plus one to be able to qualify under a certain code. If it's admin assistant at a medical, and that's the title, most likely it won't be if all the duties are based on that. But if it's mixed, which is common for certain jobs, that you do kind of 2 jobs at a time, and mixed duties, but 50% plus one belong to a different code, then you can move codes. You can move between codes comfortably and legally. Otherwise, it may not be possible.
Okay. This person has a medical exam and a police certificate since January that they used for the Express Entry application. Could it be reused for this program?
Yes, it can. Yeah. Medical tests are valid for 1 year, and police clearance certificates are valid for 1 year as well from the date of issue. So yes, they can be reused.
Okay. For international students, do you have to be employed in one of the skills positions from the NOC?
No, it could be any position.
Okay. In the intent to reside declaration, can it be mentioned having first cousin aunt residing in Delta, BC, and do I need documents for them?
You don't have to go as far as providing documents. Now, if you can, or maybe a letter of support from your cousin. Now, you mentioned, I have my cousin in Delta. I don't know where you are. But if it doesn't really provide support, just be careful with the wording. You probably won't need to go as far as requiring documents, maybe an ID within the letter and just a letter of support from your cousin. But it would depend. For example, I assume most people connected today are in BC, but what if someone is in Ontario? You have a cousin in Ontario, right? So you don't want to, it won't show establishment. It won't show that it's so close that they're able to help you here or in your intention to reside. But you don't need taxes, for example, like for other documents that it's family member proof of status, you won't need to show taxes or that what their condition is here. You don't have to go as far.
Okay, another question here is, what documents do I need to show in order to prove that I finished my program? Will the transcript be accepted because the last term of my program is scheduled to end on May 10th, and I expect to have my completion letter before the end of May? Can I still submit my app?
Okay. For completing the program, you usually get a letter of completion. And I'm gonna be filing some applications with the letter of same situation with the transcript and the letter of completion. The transcript itself won't work. You need some kind of proof, some kind of letter. Now there is a risk that the officer calls for the diploma and you don't have it. So it has to be explained why you don't have the diploma. Usually it's because the ceremony or the graduation comes later for certain schools, and it might take a few weeks or months to get the diploma. You just have to explain. Or maybe the school will explain that in the letter, which will make it more formal. But it has to be said by an authority that you completed the program.
Okay, so what we've done, we've categorized the programs a bit in terms of document, work experience, eligibility, etc. So I will ask you another one in the documents category. What kind of documentation is required to prove a common law spouse so that they can be included on the application?
Very important question. Okay. If you're applying with a common law spouse, and sometimes even married, but common law has a very specific pattern. Common law, by definition, it's considered after 12 months of cohabitation. 12 months of consecutive cohabitation, so meaning every month you were together. Proof of address, it's the main source, that's your main source of information. So that's the main proof. So that's, for example, one bill for each one. Doesn't have to be joint, but it could be one bill for each person for every month or every other month. For example, January, I submit a bill, and then February, my partner, March, I do, like one-on-one. Some people get confused with proving the relationship or the cohabitation. Two completely different things. You can have a relationship with someone, but not live with that person. So photos of the relationship, photos won't suffice. That's not proof of cohabitation. That's proof of the relationship. So make sure you have a combination of both. So you're proving that this is because then it could be your roommate, right? So if you don't prove that you do some things together, that this is a couple, then it might be your roommate. You have to show a little bit of both. Okay, we're a couple, but we also cohabitate. We live together. Bills, cell phone bills, lease agreement, letter from the landlord, a couple of letters from witnesses, BC Hydro bills, internet bills, correspondence received to the same address, tax returns showing common law, and most important, so the statutory declaration of common law signed before a notary public or a lawyer, and that the dates match what you've told immigration in the past. Because if you file for something earlier, let's say last month I filed for a work permit, but I did not declare my common law status, and now I'm declaring my common law status and the dates don't match, again, misrepresentation, so be careful with that.
Okay. Do dependents also need to get their medical done and police certificates, or only the principal applicant?
They have to get it too. That's actually part of being admissible to Canada and show admissibility. So medical and criminal, they have to get it too.
For all dependents?
They have to be older than 18 years old for police clearance. For medical, everyone gets it.
If there is a spouse and they are also eligible, in the case of one being a student and one being a worker, should both apply, or which one would probably be get a higher eligibility?
Okay. Good question. Smart people. Yeah, that's a dual application. I'm filing some of those too. So go for both, because your chances will increase. So that will be a cross-reference application, 2 different principal applicants, 2 different dependents. So we'll be cross-referencing and the documents will be very similar. So try both because your chances will increase. Now, instead of having only 40,000 with international graduate or 30,000 if it's Annex B of foreign workers, you have 70,000 out of 90,000. So great chances.
Okay. I'm just going through to see if I missed any question. Can you talk about the inadmissibility? For example, if a family member is outside of Canada, but they have status in Canada, is that inadmissible?
No, it's not inadmissible. So they have status in Canada, they're probably traveling. Let's say if they have a work permit, which is usually the case, but they're back home, that does not render inadmissible.
Okay. Oh, this question is the PCCs for Mexican La Carta de no Antecedentes Penales?
Oh, for Mexico, did you ask? Okay, that's actually why I said that you have to make sure you follow the instructions from the Immigration Canada website, because I'm from Mexico, I'm very familiar with the situation. And for example, you don't need that document. In some countries, like Mexico, you get state police clearance certificates. You don't need that. You need the federal one, which has a completely different name. So make sure you are getting the document from the proper authority. And it happens in other countries. I've seen it. I've seen several applications where I get the police clearance certificates. And then when I go check on the Canadian website, and from all over the world, because I represent clients from all over the world, I see that the name is not the same. At this time, Immigration Canada, the website tells you the name of the document that you have to get from your country and the issuing authority. So we make sure that matches. So you have to make sure of that too.
Okay. If I worked part-time for a year, but I'm currently laid off, can I still apply?
Under what stream? But no, it should not, laid off, it's not active work. They should be back at work.
Okay. I have applied for my PCC, but my home country is currently in lockdown and my PCC cannot be processed now. What is your recommendation?
Submit a letter of explanation. If you can find proof, compelling proof, maybe a newspaper article or something, like any kind of proof that backs up your statement, try. It is not guaranteed that the officer will take that into consideration, but it's worth trying. This is out of your hands.
Okay. Also, for those who can't get medical exams on or before May 6th, do you recommend that they don't apply?
As I mentioned at the beginning, it's not going to close the next day. So I will still encourage you to book your medical test and monitor the behavior of the program.
Okay. I know we said we would close at 8 o'clock.
I can answer a few more questions. I don't mind.
Wonderful. Am I allowed to apply if I haven't taken my English exam and the date I have is the 8th of June?
No, you need the English test in hand. So for people who have the exam date in June or July, because there are some who have it in July,
right?
You have the advantage of sit and watch. You will monitor, you're monitoring the program, so you'll be able to see it. You still write a test. You're going to need it for a different program anyway. You cannot, but do not apply if you don't have the test, because your application will be refused and it's going to be a waste of time and money.
Okay, here's an interesting one. Is there a requirement for an express entry profile, because it appears that this will be a brand new portal?
No, there is no requirement for express entry. Two completely different things.
Okay, wonderful.
Or do they mean an account? Because that's different. Express entry profile, no, but they will need the GC key account.
They will need the GCT account. Okay.
Yes, so they need a GCT account, which you can create. And also my advice for that is do not use the third party for logging in, because if you get someone to review your application, a representative or someone else, then you don't have to give access with your bank account or personal information. You can just use the username and password and change it later.
My common law partner is overseas for the past 18 months, I'm assuming because of the pandemic. Can I still add them to the application?
Yeah, you can. One of the exemptions that I mentioned, and that ensure that you have all the requirements as a principal applicant, but you still list them because they're your family members.
Okay, is a Canadian police certificate for residents here in Canada, is that required for this program?
Good question. It is not required, but it's there is a contradiction with the Canadian website, because it says that if you are in Canada, you do not require the background check for the police clearance certificate in Canada. However, in practice, for express entry specifically, we've seen officers requesting the Canadian police clearance certificate. So for our clients, we are asking them to submit the RCMP police clearance.
The RCMP police clearance.
Yeah, so the federal one, yeah.
Okay, cool. What? This is a good one. What are the expectations of processing time for this program? Because many people have submitted their permanent residency applications and have been waiting for years.
It's not gonna take years, because luckily it's gonna be digital. I foresee 8 to 12 months for processing time, based on the number of applications, because it's about 90,000 that they have to process. And considering about 27,000 applications that they got in February, plus the intakes of the last few draws for express entry. So it's gonna take like 8 to 12 months of processing time.
Okay. I have been in Canada for 2.5 years. The PPC, the police certificate that needed to come when I was coming to Canada, it can't be reused.
You should not risk it. Get a new one. Get a recent one. If you get into claiming exemptions, the officer may just turn down the application.
Wow. Okay.
I will not risk it. I will not advise my clients to risk it. So I will say, get a new one that is within the time frame.
I think the concern is that everyone wants to submit before that May date, and so many people can't get it.
Yeah, so for some countries, it can be done online. So see how difficult it is. But the more risk, then it will mean the application return or cancel. And if that happens, there is no other chance.
Okay. Do you foresee, based on your experience, any more programs for migration coming, since there is a 400,000 cap to be filled?
I don't know if they're going to be like this. Hard to say. But based on the behavior of the government for the last 2 draws for express entry, I'll say that it is expected, if anything, based on how many immigrants make it, because there is one thing that people are not considering. For example, the government invites 6,000 people, that was a draw today, or 27,000 people in February, or 40,000 people for this program. Now this one has a cap, and they are gonna keep assessing applications until they make it to 40,000. Even if the first 20,000 are refused or canceled because they are missing something, they will keep going. And we know for sure they will make it to 40,000.
Okay.
For other intakes, for example, the one today or the 27,000 in February, a lot of people don't make it.
Really?
And the reason, yeah, many people don't make it, because applications are refused for the smallest detail that you can imagine, like the list that I mentioned, like photos instead of scanning documents, like missing one translation, so they're canceled. So it is hard for the government to achieve the numbers because of the way the applications are prepared. So just take care of the details, just read the small print. Everything is on the website, and you can be self-represented. Just be careful. And the standards of practice, that's something that we saw today, so that you can enhance your application and make it better.
Okay, let me run through two more. Is it counted as a job offer if I'm working as a full-time self-employed person? I think you
No.
answered.
Yeah, not,
Okay.
well, unless it was within the exemption, which is medical, like in a medical, as a doctor, working as a doctor.
I saw on a medical doctor website that if our application deadline is before our scheduled appointment with the office, you're permitted to submit a letter with your application indicating that you have an immigration medical appointment booked.
You can submit the appointment letter and a letter. It is not guaranteed that it's going to be accepted.
Wow. Okay.
The problem, something I like to add about this and why I'm saying those things. During my practice, I've seen things happening many different ways. So the website says one thing and reality sometimes is a little bit different. If you're going to claim an exemption or an exception to the rule, point out the officer to your saying. Some officers are quite new as well to the processing. This is new for everyone. Some technical difficulties may happen. So bring the attention to the officer to what you want them to see and why. So back up your statements. Do not assume. And that will make it easier. That will reduce the risk.
For international graduate programs, can you clarify the credential requirements?
I'm not certain. So the credential requirements, so bachelor, certificate, diploma, I don't know exactly what that means.
I'm trying to figure out what the question is asking as well. Yeah, it says, okay, so for diploma certificates, each program of study must be 8 months in duration.
At least 8 months.
Right.
Again, it reduces to a post-graduation work permit. So if the program and the institution were eligible for a post-graduation work permit, which is the rule for the post-graduation work permit is that it has to be longer than 8 months, and then all the requirements, the other requirements.
Okay, so this person says they got a 15-month diploma, so it must mean they're eligible, correct?
Yeah, I should be eligible.
Okay. Okay, I pursued a 1-year postgrad certificate from September 2020 to April 2021. I called IRCC. They told me I'm eligible, but the website does not address this properly as it does not align with what the representative at the call center said. Do you think this person is eligible?
So from September to April?
September to April.
That's an 8-month program. So it's considered one academic year because summer, it's an official break. So if it's one academic year, which is usually 8 months, so that's fall semester and winter. So it's, yeah, they're eligible.
Okay. Okay, I think that's it. I do believe we got in most, if not all, the questions. Maria, I must say thank you. This was a phenomenal presentation. I think you really helped so many of us who had some serious questions and misconceptions about this stream, at least get some clarity on it. Thank you again. To all the members, to everyone who joined us, I want to say thank you for taking the time. I do know many people got their questions answered. And I do believe, Maria, you had your contact details listed. So if anyone has any particular situation that they'd like to reach out to your team for, I do believe it was on the screen just now.
Yeah,
but
it was on the screen.
Invicta.
Invicta Law Corporate. And I will be posting information in real time as news come or any tips or stuff like that. So I will be posting on the social media so people can, people who are self-represented have access to proper information and have a successful application.
I really appreciate this presentation. It was great. And I want to thank you for your patience. I know the questions came frequently and a lot. So thank you everyone who submitted their questions, and thank you so much for your presentation. I know we went a little bit over time, but as you can see, there's so much anxiety. There's a question coming. Where will you post the updates? Can we follow your law firm on social media?
Yeah, I will post it again right here.
Okay.
That one.
It's Invicta Law Corporation. You can follow them on social media, and I'm sure there will be some platform to submit any other questions that you may have. So once again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. The team appreciates it. It was a fantastic presentation. And I do wish you a good night. And we will stay in touch.
Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Good night. Have a good night.